Dive watches are already some of the toughest mechanical objects humans make, but every once in a while, a brand or two takes things way past what's reasonable and straight into obsession. Today we're looking at 3 watches that were never designed to be sensible, watches that weren't built for swimming or desk diving or even recreational scuba. These were built for the deep, for crushing pressure, for environments so extreme that humans can't even survive there. So let's get into it. On the table today, the Oris Aquis Pro 4000M, raw, industrial and shockingly serious for the money, the Omega Planet Ocean Ultra Deep 6000M, one of the deepest rated production dive watches ever made, and the icon, the benchmark, the Rolex Deepsea Sea-Dweller rated to 3,900 meters. Rolex has the heritage, Omega can go deeper than any of these, and Oris might just be the dark horse. So the question is simple. Which of these beasts truly rules the deep? Before we get into the watches, let's walk through some of the history first. To understand why these watches exist, you have to go back to a time when diving was genuinely dangerous. Not recreational, not commercialized, but experimental. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, saturation diving was still being figured out in real time. The pioneers in the field, the divers, were living under pressure for days or even weeks, breathing helium-rich gas mixtures, working at depths that had never been attempted before, and mechanical watches, the only reliable wrist timekeepers available, were failing. When divers returned to the surface, helium molecules trapped inside the watch cases expanded faster than they could escape. The result? Crystals popped off, movements destroyed, and timekeeping was lost. That problem forced watchmakers to confront pressure not just as a ceiling issue, but as a systems problem. Rolex was one of the first brands to take this seriously. Working with professional diving organizations, including Comex, Rolex developed the helium escape valve and introduced the Sea-Dweller, a watch designed specifically for saturation diving. This wasn't marketing. These watches were tools, worn by professionals, modified, tested, and sometimes destroyed in the process. And that early work cemented Rolex's dominance in professional dive watches for decades to come. But Rolex didn't stop there. Throughout the second half of the 20th century, Rolex continued experimenting with extreme depth, from the Deep Sea Special to the watches strapped on the outside of the submersible. These weren't commercial products. They were engineering exercises, proof that mechanical watches could survive conditions no human could. But here's where the story changes. In the modern era, deep diving isn't just about humans anymore. It's about submersibles, robotics, scientific exploration, and extreme testing environments that far exceed anything divers experience. And that opened the door for the other brands to enter the race. Omega approached the problem like engineers, measuring, testing, certifying. Oris approached it like toolmakers, asking how to build something strong, practical, and reliable without luxury excess. Suddenly the question wasn't just how deep can the watch go, it became how do different philosophies solve the same extremely challenging problem. And that's what makes this comparison interesting, and that's why I wanted to do it. These watches aren't just about depth ratings, they're about evolution. They show us how far mechanical watchmaking has come and how many different paths there are to still get to the same goal. Hands on with the watches now, guys. Let's start with the wildcard on the table, the Oris Aquis Pro 4000M. At first glance, this thing is intimidating. At 49.5mm titanium case, rated to 4,000 meters, with an unapologetically industrial look. This is the kind of watch that doesn't ask for attention, it actually just grabs it. But once you get past that size, you start noticing the details. The bezel uses Oris's rotating safety system, which physically locks it in place. You can't accidentally knock it underwater. That's not a gimmick, that's professional-grade functional thinking. Inside you get the in-house caliber 400, 5-day power reserve, anti-magnetic architecture, and a 10-year service interval. At this price point, it's huge. Is the finishing on the same level as the Rolex and the Omega? No. Is it massive on the wrist? Absolutely. But here's the thing, this watch feels honest. It's not trying to be luxurious, it's not trying to be iconic, it's trying to be the deepest diver at the best price. And does it, coming in at only 5,800 Swiss francs. That's not just good value, that's disruptive. And then there's the technical monster, the Omega Planet Ocean Ultra Deep 6000M. rated to 6,000 meters, deeper than any production dive watch ever made at time of this release. This watch is derived directly from the Omega's experimental timepieces that reached the bottom of the Mariana Trench in 2019. The 45.5mm case features improved gaskets and a special AR coating on the sapphire crystal. Both assist in handling the classic issues with helium, and because of that, there's no helium escape valve on this timepiece. Omega didn't engineer a solution to helium, they engineered it out of the equation. The movement inside the watch is the coaxial master chronometer caliber 8912, META certified for accuracy, magnetism, and durability. This is a watch built like a scientific instrument. It's thick, it's heavy, and it looks unapologetically modern. If Rolex represents origins and tradition, and Oris represents practicality, Omega represents modern technical ambition. This is not a subtle watch, it's heavy, it's tense, and it reminds you constantly that it's there. This watch is rated to 3,900 or nearly 13,000 feet, and it achieves that using Rolex's ring lock system. At its core, the ring lock is a pressure capsule, a thick domed sapphire crystal, a nitrogen alloy steel compression ring, and a titanium case pack, all working together to absorb pressure rather than fight it. The result is a watch that feels incredibly solid and incredibly serious. On paper, it measures 44mm wide and nearly 18mm thick. On the wrist, it feels even more substantial. This is not a subtle watch, it's heavy, it's tense, and it reminds you constantly that it's there. And yes, this watch is directly linked to Rolex's deep-sea experimentation, including the James Cameron Deep-Sea Challenge, which went 10,908 meters below sea level. But here's where things get interesting. The design hasn't really evolved. The dial is pure Rolex, legible, conservative, and familiar. The bracelet is excellent, with glide lock and flip lock extensions, but visually it's very much business as usual. It's extremely easy to use, and I think out of the three watches, the best system. This is what we can expect from Rolex, a master in staying true to the design language of its long history. And that raises the question, is the Deepsea still the pinnacle of deep diving watches, or is it a monument to Rolex's pioneering innovation in the 1960s? Specs are one thing, but design and wearability are where theory meets reality. These watches might be engineered for the deep, but the truth is, most of their lives will be spent above sea level. So the real question is, what's it actually like to live with one of these beasts? Let's start with the Oris. There is no getting around it. The Aquis Pro 4000M is massive. At 49.5mm, this is a watch you feel the moment you put it on your wrist. But Oris makes a few smart choices that stop it from becoming unmanageable. The titanium case keeps the weight down, which is crucial at this size. The lugs are slightly curved and short, pulling the watch into the wrist rather than letting it sit flat on awkward. And then there's the strap. You only get rubber here, no bracelet option. But it's thick, flexible, and clearly designed for actual diving. With the wetsuit, this watch makes complete sense. Without one, it's a statement. This is not a daily watch for most people, and Oris doesn't pretend it is. It's honest about what it is, and that honesty works in its favor. The Omega takes a different approach. 45.5mm, it's smaller on paper than Oris, but still very much in Beast's territory. The case shape is more sculpted and more deliberate. There's a clear sense of modern design here. Sharp transitions, purposeful surfaces, and a dial that feels almost architectural. Omega also offers the ultra deep in different materials, Omega steel or titanium, which changes the wearing experience significantly. The titanium versions are still heavy, but they wear more comfortably over time. On the wrist, the ultra deep feels tense and precise. Everything about it feels intentional. The downside is thickness. This watch sits tall at 18.2mm, and you're always aware of it. It feels like a piece of equipment because it is. And then we come to the Rolex. On paper, the Deepsea shouldn't be wearable. It's thick, it's heavy, and it's built like a vault. But somehow, Rolex makes it work. The case proportions are familiar, the dial is clean and legible, and the Oyster bracelet does it a lot of the heavy lifting here. The glide lock clasp allows for micro adjustments on the fly, which makes a huge difference over a long day. The watch still has presence, and a lot of it, but it's the most balanced of the three. This is where Rolex's expertise shows. They've been refining the ergonomics of tool watches for the past decades, and it pays off. The Deepsea feels like something you could wear every day, if you were committed to the size. Here's the reality check. None of these watches are subtle. They don't slide under the cuff. They don't disappear on the wrist. These are the watches you choose because they are extreme, because they look the way they look. But there's a difference between extremity and comfort. The Oris is the most purpose-built, best on rubber, best over a wetsuit, least adaptable. The Omega is the most modern, visually striking, technically imposing, and very much a contemporary statement. And the Rolex is the most versatile, still massive, but the easiest to integrate into daily life. And that distinction matters. Now to the wrist test. When you put all three on back to back, something interesting happens. The Oris feels like a professional tool, the Omega like a scientific instrument, and the Rolex feels like a luxury object that just happens to survive the deep. None of these impressions are accidental. They are the results of decades of design and innovation. And depending on what you want your watch to say about you, one of these might feel right and the others won't. When we start talking about watches rated to 4, 5, and even 6,000 meters, we're no longer in the realm of incremental improvement. At these depths, pressure becomes violent. At 6,000 meters, you're dealing with nearly 600 atmospheres of pressure, enough to permanently deform steel, distort sapphire, and collapse poorly engineered cases. And what makes this comparison fascinating is that each of these brands solves the same problem in a completely different way. With the Oris, you've got a massive titanium case, a thick sapphire crystal, and a traditional screw-down case back built to withstand serious deformation. But where Oris differentiates itself is usability. The rotation safety system bezel physically locks in place. This isn't just about stiffer clicks, it's a true mechanical lock that has to be intentionally disengaged. That's a professional-grade thinking. Titanium also plays a major role here. It keeps weight manageable despite the size and offers excellent corrosion resistance in salt water. Is it elegant? No. Effective? Absolutely. Omega takes the most radical approach, the only watch here without a helium escape valve. The Planet Ocean Ultra Deep, with its improved gaskets and IAR-coated crystals, solved the old issue in saturation diving. Crafted out of Omega steel, it took Omega more than 5 years to invent an alloy harder and more resistant to deformation than conventional 316L steel. And Rolex takes a more traditional but incredibly refined approach. The ring lock system doesn't try to eliminate pressure, it manages it. As extreme pressure increases, force is directed inward toward the nitrogen alloy steel compression ring rather than outward against the case walls. The sapphire crystal flexes slightly, the titanium caseback absorbs stress, and the system actually tightens under load. This is why Rolex can achieve 3,900 meters using traditional oyster steel rather than exotic alloys. And then there's the helium escape valve. It may feel old school compared to Omega's deep diver without a helium escape valve, but it remains a proven solution to saturation diving. The trade-off? Thickness. To make this system work, everything has to be massively overbuilt, especially the sapphire crystal. But what you get in return is something Rolex does better than anyone else: redundancy, predictability, and long-term reliability. So while all three watches achieve extreme depth ratings, they get there through three different philosophies: practicality, elimination, and controlled compression. Depth resistance is only half the equation. A true dive watch has to keep accurate time while dealing with shock, pressure, temperature changes, and magnetic fields. And that's where the movements inside these watches really separate themselves. Let's start again with the Oris. The caliber 400 is one of the most impressive movements in this comparison. Not because it chases records, but because it's designed for real-world ownership. A 5-day power reserve means that the movement operates under lower constant tension, which can improve long-term durability. The anti-magnetic architecture protects against fields far beyond what ISO dive standards require, and then there's the 10-year service interval. Omega raises the bar for technical performance. The coaxial master chronometer caliber 8912 is META certified, meaning it's tested as a fully cased watch, not just a loose movement. It's resistant to 15,000 Gauss, maintains tight accuracy tolerances across multiple positions, and is tested under real-world conditions. The coaxial escapement reduces sliding friction, which helps preserve accuracy over time and extends service intervals. And finally, Rolex. Rolex movements are rarely about headline numbers. They're about consistency. The movement inside the Deepsea is built to survive decades of shock pressure and temperature variation. It's protected inside a heavily shielded case, isolated from the outside world, and regulated to prioritize long-term stability rather than short-term precision records. Is it the most exciting movement here? No. Rolex movements are generally not that way. But if your definition of accuracy includes still running perfectly 30 years from now with minimal servicing, Rolex remains incredibly hard to beat. So once again, the answer here really depends on what you value most. Modern reliability, Oris, certified precision, Omega, and long-term stability, Rolex. And that's really the story of this entire comparison.
When it comes to lume, dive watches don't mess around. This is where brands bring their A game, and these heavy hitters are no exception. Different colors, different layouts, and different philosophies, all glowing in the dark. First up, Oris. You're getting a clean mix of blue and green super luminova. Simple, balanced, and easy on the eyes. Nothing flashy, just solid legibility when the lights go out. Then there's Omega, and this is where things get clever. Almost everything glows blue except the minute hand and the lume pip at 12 o'clock, which shine green. That contrast isn't just for looks, it lets you instantly track elapsed time, which is exactly what a dive watch is supposed to do. Still super luminova like the Oris, but used very intentionally. And finally, Rolex. Here, it's all blue lume. This isn't just standard stuff. Rolex uses its own proprietary material called chromalite, designed to glow longer and more consistently in the dark. Now, from a real-world usability standpoint, I'd say the Omega is the quickest to read at a glance, followed by the Oris and then the Rolex. But when it comes to pure brightness and how long that glow lasts, Rolex takes the crown, no question. Different approaches, different strengths, and that's what makes this comparison so interesting.
These watches aren't just answers to technical problems, they're expressions of how three different brands think about watchmaking and about the people who wear their watches. So after all of this, the specs, the engineering, the history, we come to the part everyone always wants, the verdict. But here's the truth, there is no single best deep diver here. These watches aren't competing on the same emotional level, they're solving different problems for different people and different price points. Making this video was as difficult as making these watches waterproof to such depths. So I would sincerely love to thank my retailers of trust. For the Oris, Mr. Dominik Megli from Ursachen here in Bern, my go-to destination for indies and always a good time. Bucherer for the pre-owned certified Rolex with one of the best shops in Zurich and always with great hospitality and good coffee. And for the Omega, my sincere thank you goes to my friend and fellow local watch collector and author, Garrett Worthington. Please check out all the links in the description below and show them some love. And now I want to hear it from you. Comment below which is your favorite watch from all these three models. Is it the Oris, Omega or the Rolex? And don't forget to tell me why. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.